to license it.
All right, welcome back to Radio Wasteland, and our guest tonight is Tobe Johnson, and we're going to be talking about the Owl Moon Lab. And normally, Tobe Johnson, I get into the person and the history and so on as the first step, but really, I think the owl, and she says, I was reading about this book, it's more than just a book, isn't that right?
Well, I hope so. You could use it as a paperweight. You could set a beer on it.
Right, but there's a lot of interactive, technologically interactive aspects.
I know. Yeah, I kid because it's the first book I put out, so I'm new to the authorship world, and maybe people will use it for that. But inside the book is a few surprises embedded are QR codes that are attached to the chapters. So as you read along in the story, the true account of, I guess, my story and the Owl Moon Lab and the Addams family, which is who the book is largely written about as its property. And so as you read along, you get a hold of a QR code that's attached to the chapter. And as you're reading it, you can go transport yourself right to that chapter because we filmed everything, all the audio, all the video, all the paperwork, all the guests that arrived, the witnesses, the documentary that is coming out about it. It's all embedded in these QR codes. So not my idea. That's through a guy much smarter than me named Doug Hychek of Monster Quest fame. So without Doug, I wouldn't have had that.
Yeah, well, when I read it, it was one of those moments because I'm a guy that likes to create stuff and I do some marketing and stuff like that. And when I read it, I'm just all, duh, what a great idea. Why didn't I think of this, So I thought it was a really clever idea, really good idea. Now, the title of the book, let's break that down because I'm not really sure what
the tongue teaser.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Why the Owl?
So the Owl Moon Lab.
Yeah.
Yeah. The name of the book is The Owl Moon Lab, a Paranormal Experiment. And we vacillated a little bit on the title, but the title wrote itself about 2018 when underneath the full moon in the little town of Cottage Grove, Oregon on Good Friday, I believe it was March 30th, 2018. The moon was also called the Owl Moon, which I think under pagan traditions you would find that the Owl Moon or the Dog Moon or these different full moons have names after animals. So underneath the Owl Moon, we found what appeared to be giant knee impressions in the mud above this property. And we cast these knee impressions, took the hair from the knee impressions and sent them up for analysis. And once we cast these, now we know they are knee impressions of something plus or minus 1,400 pounds with anomalous hair that doesn't come from anywhere on the charts that we know of. And that was via a gal up in Canada named Cindy Dosen, who works for the Olympic Project, that we found that out. Once we brought this casting back of these giant knee impressions, and we are fast forwarding through, a lot of history right now to get to where we are to talk about the title. But that's where the name came from, the Owl Moon. The lab portion is kind of a tongue-in-cheek thing because in the process of having legitimate supernatural Sasquatch encounters, UFOs, EVPs, amazing EVPs, I'm also in the process of building a Sasquatch replica. So as a joke, the homeowners who were gracious enough to lend me their garage to build this giant 8.5-foot tall Sasquatch for Ron Moorhead, he said, oh, it's like, Frankenstein's laboratory now in my house. And so because of that, all these things started to pile up. So the Owl Moon Lab, although we did do experiments in this house on the property, they were rudimentary at best compared to what I would do now. And so that's where it got its name.
So, sorry, Tara, go ahead.
Well, you mentioned right there a couple of different phenomena. You mentioned Bigfoot, you mentioned EVPs, you mentioned UFO sightings. And those are things that are often put together, but often you find, UFO people who are like, don't talk to me about EVPs, or you find Bigfoot people who are like, it's just a big ape, right? But it seems, but we're sort of putting them together into more of a, like, sort of a synthesized thing. Are these related phenomenon, or are they separate?
It's an ecosystem of weirdness, and you can't push one phenomena out from the ecosystem if it doesn't fit your worldview, your narrative. I mean, if we go back to John Keel, you would look into the Mothman prophecies and say, oh, we just have this apparition that seems to, be a harbinger of doom or death. And that's the end of the story. But that's not where John Keel left off at the end of it. I mean, I remember seeing pictures of him and video of him showing Sasquatch impressions on Johnny Carson or David Letterman. So it takes you in these weird directions, whether or not you want to go on them. What we argue, and it's not really an argument, it's just the way that this phenomena goes, is when the phenomena comes to you and comes to your property, more often than not, these people who are open about it and let you come live at their house like I did and write a book about it, they get the stranger phenomena. Now, why would that be? Why is that? I'm not quite sure. It can be hostile at times. It can be friendly at times. It can be scary at times. But one thing that it isn't is predictable. The only thing predictable about it is it's not predictable. And so when I say we have these crystal clear EVPs, we weren't looking for them. We're trying to record Bigfoot audio, Bigfoot vocalizations. Like if we could get, anywhere near what Ron captured as far as samurai chatter, we would have been thrilled. But it just refused to stop there. And so the more that we were kind of honest with what we were trying to do, and we were a little confused about what we were trying to do. Were we actually trying to understand the phenomena on its terms, or were we thrill seekers? Right. And we had to be honest with the phenomena. And I know that sounds kind of crazy, but like I said, we're fast forwarding through 15 years of me chasing after the phenomena previous to this. And I had been told that if you want to get close to it, you have to get close to extended experiencers. These are people that have backyard Bigfoot issues. And once you do, be prepared, because the wheels probably will fall off as far as your expectation of this being a giant relic hominid. And I was game for it. I mean, I had waited so long, 15 years to get into a house like this. And so we engaged it. And I spent the better part of almost a year straight living and breathing, writing this book. Although I didn't really think it was going to be a book, I thought people would appreciate the story. And I just wanted to have a sighting. Like that was my whole goal, is like, can I please see one already? I've chased down this damn dirty ape for the last 15 years. Please just give me a sighting.
Right.
And
it's
so
kind of a funny problem to have, is like, I just want to see a Bigfoot, but I keep running into these.
I don't care, just something.
Just get into these darn ghosts and and UFOs. It's like,
yeah. And I was all too happy to engage those phenomena too, because, as a young man, when you walk into the library at school, where's Bigfoot? It's lined up with ESP, telekinesis, UFOs, all of it, right? I mean, and so that was already embedded. Well, it turns out that it is on the proper section of the library shelf, that Bigfoot actually does belong in that category. And I don't waver from that position at all after everything that has happened and continues to happen, because this phenomena has a half-life. It follows you. You look at the work of, Skinwalker Ranch. They talk a lot about the hitchhiker phenomena, where things follow you back home. And it will tip its hat big time to you and say, oh, yeah, we know where you live. We know you recognize this object because we left that right there on your coffee table, and here it is again. So these kind of things you can't say no to. There's no room for there being hijinks or there being a hoax, not with all the audio and video and eyewitness testimony.
What's that? And he's carrying me off. Isn't that silly?
Silly? It's for real.
Yeah, how about that?
Oh, goodness, Bigfoot. Now I'm imagining you sound just like Blue